Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Work Bubble podcast. I'm your host, Laura, a licensed master social worker here in New York. And today I'm excited to introduce Jocelyn Sailor, LCSW. Thank you, Jocelyn, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
So am I. So with Jocelyn, we're going to be getting into school social work. She also has a planner that she has released already.
Yes. We are going on year 4.
Oh, that's so exciting. So we're going to get into it. Before we really dive in, don't forget to like, share, follow the podcast on wherever you're listening, and now we'll get started. So Jocelyn, again, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to start by just introducing yourself to the listeners, kind of your background and what you're currently doing?
Sure. So as you stated, my name is Jocelyn Sailor. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the states of Connecticut and Massachusetts. My full-time job is called a district social work coach. Very similar to a school social work, like a clinical supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have a business, which is School Social Work Solutions, LLC, where I create planners for school social workers, school mental health professionals, as well as social work students that helps them stay organized with a wealth of resources for them to kind of get a jump start on their career or any support while they're in school. And then I have another prong to my business that I just began a few years ago where I do professional learning to help build the capacity of school social workers with various school districts.
That's amazing. What a huge resource and like things that you're providing for people.
Thank you.
Initially led you to social work and then the school social work space?
Yeah. So it's really funny. I always say social work is in my blood because my dad is a clinical social worker.
Oh, wow.
So growing up, I didn't really truly know what he did, but he would always say he helped people.
Mm-hmm.
So, growing up, he worked for like the Veterans Administration and did therapy. So as a kid, you don't really understand what that means. So I just knew he helped people.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until I graduated with my bachelor's degree. I had a psychology degree. I went back and I worked for a nonprofit in my former high school. And what I did in that role through, it was a TRIO program called Gear Up.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was to help the seniors go on college visits, help them with their financial aid, with their college essays, and really kind of help them get into college. That was the whole point of that position. And I really, truly enjoyed that work with the students. And I thought about, maybe do I want to be like a school counselor? I really like this school setting. So I looked into being a school counselor. And to me, it just felt like I could only work in the school. Right. And I wanted something that maybe was a little more versatile. So I remember talking to my dad and he was like, well, did you ever think about social work? You know, that's what my degree is in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, not really. So then he was like, yeah, you can work in a school. You can work for the government, for probation. You can have your own business. You can work in a hospital. And I was like, well, I think I like that because you can work in so many different settings. So I did my research on how to get my MSW. Applied to the program. I ended up going to Springfield College while simultaneously working for Department of Children and Families, which is Child Protective, Services.
Yeah.
And then I got my master's. So I continued to work for DCF for a little while longer. And then I changed to medical social work for a bit. I didn't love it. It was a great experience, but I didn't love it. It was mainly a geriatric population.
Okay.
That's when I said, you know what? I want to look into being a school social worker.
Yeah.
So I got a certification, which is what you need in the state of Connecticut. It's called the 071. So it's a test. Well, you had to take it. You don't have to take it anymore. But when I got mine, you had to take an exam. It was like math and English, kind of a teacher's test.
Right.
To get the certification. And then I applied for jobs and landed my job. And I have been a school social worker for a total of 11 years. But the last 3 years, I have been a social work coach.
Amazing. Okay. How was your experience actually getting into school social work? Because sometimes I talk to people, I guess it depends on the community and the school, but I feel like I've heard you kind of have to know someone in order to like get your foot in the door. Was that your experience or were you able to just get in through applying to different places?
So I would say it was a mixture of both. So I got several interviews, some where I did not know anyone in the organization, and one where I did know someone in the organization, but they weren't directly in the social work department.
Right.
So that was helpful. That was definitely helpful to make that connection. So both of those organizations, the one where I knew someone and did not, I had interviews with both and I had job offers from both.
Awesome.
So to say, do you need to know someone?
Not essential.
No, but it's
Hmm.
not essential, right? So I actually ended up going with the organization, with the person who I kind of knew was
Hmm.
in that district. I went with that one versus the other just because of the setup. One was a charter school, one was a public school.
Right.
And I know charter schools have different kind of rules and
Yeah.
I just wanted more job security. So, I went
Absolutely.
with the public school sector.
Wow. That's so interesting. Okay. Very cool.
Mhm.
Now, what does coaching look like? Like, what is that piece to it?
Yeah. So, I would say one, I think this is very unique to my district, having school social
Yeah.
work coaches. The various school social workers I've spoken to, kind of through social media and whatnot in different areas of the country
Yeah.
don't have this level of support. I believe someone in Florida told me that they had a coach.
Hmm.
And that was it. Oh, in California, a district in California had kind of a similar role. So
Okay.
basically, it looks very much like middle management. So if you think about the school social worker, they are working directly in the school with the students and the staff.
Hmm.
School social work coach is pretty much training and developing those school social workers within the school.
Yeah.
But then we're also working with the director and the assistant director who are very much of the macro level and
Hmm.
kind of giving feedback about what's happening in the schools. What are the needs? What are the deficits? What are some professional learning that would be applicable to the needs that we're seeing? How can we kind of make things better from what we're seeing in the schools?
Hmm.
So we kind of feed that information to the directors to make whatever changes are appropriate and
Hmm.
support to be available.
Okay. I feel like that's such an essential role that I'm not seeing enough, where you can
Yes,
also really advocate for the school social workers doing that direct work.
yes.
And like you're kind of in the best of both worlds a little bit.
Yeah, and it's really cool because, especially new school social workers, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes if you're right out of college, you're new. You have a
Yeah.
lot of questions. So we can do, triage via phone. School social
Hmm.
workers can call us and say, "Hey, I have this crisis. What do I do?" Or I'm thinking about doing this. Does that sound right? And
Hmm.
then the coach can give feedback and say, "Oh, maybe you should try this or do this or call this person."
Yeah.
To help them kind of triage those crises in the moment.
Hmm.
Another piece is if our school social workers are absent and the school has a child who is in need of a risk assessment because they've either stated they want to harm themselves or harm someone else,
Yeah.
then we would report to that specific school, do the
Mhm.
assessment on the student, and then take whatever necessary steps.
Okay.
We also do clinical supervision, which allows social workers to get their LCSW supervision hours so they can sit for the test, which is a huge perk because a lot of people have to pay for that.
Yeah, that's huge. I've seen that a lot in school social work too, where
Yeah.
people are like struggling to get supervision hours. I've also seen, I love too what you said about just the training and development piece, because
Yes.
I mean, everyone's journey is very different, but I think I've seen a few school social workers that they don't go directly into school social work. Like they kind of start their social work career elsewhere and then they're like, oh, you know what? I want to try this out. And you don't really know like, like what to do. So that
Yeah.
piece is really important. Mhm.
Yes. We're
Okay.
also part of the interview process too.
Oh,
So we sit on the panel with the directors and the assistant director to
yeah.
interview individuals to see if they're a good fit for our district. So
Mhm.
that's an important piece, and then a lot of professional learning to build the capacity of those social workers so they feel confident in their work.
Okay. What do you see are like the most important qualities then when you're involved in that interview process for a school social worker?
That's a good question. I would say having good crisis management skills and be
Mm.
able to share some examples of how you've been able to de-escalate a crisis, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of crisis work in school social work. Kids
Hmm.
are in crisis a lot, especially post-pandemic. So
Yeah.
that's a huge skill. Having really good communication skills. And when I say
Hmm.
communication skills, I'm really speaking to being able to clinically communicate what's going on with a student so an educator, like a teacher or a principal, understands.
Hmm.
So social worker to social worker, we kind of have all this clinical jargon we might speak between each other and we know what we're talking about, but people outside of this field have no idea. So they're just kind of looking at you like, what? So you
Hmm.
have to be able to communicate things in a way that your, especially principal, is going to kind of be on board and support the decisions you're making in regards to students and their behavior.
Absolutely. Like the psychoeducation piece kind of goes to other professionals too.
Yes.
I think that's something we do tend to fall into. And even
Hmm.
I have to remember just talking to clients is getting out of that jargon that we use that I'm so used to. Cause it's
Yes.
just like, this person has no idea what I'm talking about. They're not in
Mhm.
this world.
Right. Yeah. So
Man.
that's super important. And then just good collaboration skills.
Yeah.
Generally, so I would say my district is kind of unique. We usually have multiple school social workers in a building, but I know it's not like that everywhere. Some
Yeah.
people are split between multiple buildings, or they're the only social worker in their building.
Hmm.
So you want to have good collaboration skills, collaborating with the school counselor, the school psychologist,
Hmm.
sometimes the SLP, maybe if you're dealing with a student on the autism spectrum, with your administrators and with your teachers. It's really a collaborative approach. So
Hmm.
having those great collaboration skills is really important as well.
That's huge. Absolutely. Oh, I love this. Wonderful. Now, you kind of got into like what your role entails. What's a typical week for you? I know in social work it can be
Yeah,
there's so much variety, but can you kind of give a general answer then?
sure. So lots of meetings.
Yes.
So all right. I'm assigned, I think at this point it's about 17 school social workers
Okay.
throughout 8 different schools.
Okay.
So my week will look like meeting with those first and second year school social workers, either
Hmm.
at their school or virtually, discussing cases, discussing crisis management, whatever their needs are. We're doing that through our sessions.
Yeah.
And then there's also other collaboration meetings. So the special education director of a specific school I coach for might
Mhm.
reach out and say, hey, can you join us during this meeting? Because we're going to talk about creating a behavior intervention plan. And you kind of have that expertise in the behavior and mental health piece. And we want some of your feedback. So
Mhm.
doing those collaborative meetings, as well as collaboration with our other coaches. So we have some other coaches, the director and the assistant director, talking about the department needs and things that we need to do within the department. So it's really a lot of meetings.
Love that.
Some, yep, sometimes I may get a call from a principal if a school social worker is out and they're consulting on an issue they're seeing with a student to get some direction.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much what it looks like. Oh, and I'll also add, we as the coaches are trained. They're called CPI trainers. It stands
Okay.
for Crisis Prevention Intervention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically a model to teach de-escalation skills to teachers, security, and other staff,
Yeah.
that we're not escalating students and we're de-escalating them.
Amazing.
So we do those classes and we train staff throughout the district. That's not on a weekly basis. That's more of like every few months we run those classes. So that's part of the schedule as well.
Okay. Ah, that's such an essential piece because I feel like that also would help social workers.
Yeah,
You're not the only
yeah,
one just being like pulled into crises constantly.
right.
Everyone kind of has those skills.
Yes, very
Amazing.
important.
Wow. Well, in talking about collaboration, I mean, there's a lot of different relationships to navigate, like in that social work role in the school, like administration, teachers,
Mhm.
parents, students.
Yes.
What does good collaboration look like in that position with so many people?
That's a really good question. All right. So good collaboration is going to look like, one, good planning and good organization and good communication skills. So I guess I'll speak to each one, right? So good planning is making sure that everyone is available for
Mhm.
at a specific time for that specific meeting to collaborate. So it
Yeah.
could be you're inviting the parent, the administrator, the teacher. Let's say it's an IEP meeting. So we
Mhm.
want to make sure we have good planning skills so everyone is there, present, and available. Good organization skills, meaning let's have an agenda for that meeting so that
Mhm.
we're not wasting everybody's time. Let's get to the point of why we're here.
Yes. Which is
So,
such a thing I hear about in meetings. Like, oh,
yeah,
this could have been an email. What do we do?
right. Exactly. So let's not have one of those meetings that could have been an email, and
Hmm.
really plan out and organize what that's going to look like. And generally that's having an agenda,
Hmm.
starting off with what are some group norms? Let's all be respectful with one another. Let's practice positive intentions. Allow the speaker to finish talking before you
Hmm.
want to interject, kind of setting those norms, and then having an agenda of, all right, this person is going to speak to this specific thing about the student for this many minutes. and then
Hmm.
this person, and so on and so forth. Then we're going to have a conclusion and kind of pull together the plan. So
Love
making sure everything is organized so that we're hitting all those points. And then I think the last thing I said was communication skills. Is that what I said? I think that was the last piece. Yes. So just
communication.
being, yes. So just being able to, communicate appropriately with
Mhm.
everybody at the table. And when I say that, I'm really speaking to, sometimes we have conversations with parents that are around, trauma history or things that have happened to them or their student. We're not necessarily going to pour all that out and communicate that in a meeting with everyone there.
Right. Hmm.
So you really have to know how to kind of summarize that and maybe just share, little Johnny has a trauma history. We're going to leave it at that. We're not going to say, he was abused when he was 6 and then he was in foster care when he was 8. We don't
Yeah.
need to go into all of that.
Hmm.
Maybe that detail you share with the teacher on the side,
Hmm.
kind of summarize, but not something that we're going to share in front of the entire team. So
Right.
being able to communicate appropriately with each member of the team so that we're getting to whatever that solution is.
That's huge. I distinctly remember this one school meeting I was in when I was first starting in college. I was in community college and I was just like shadowing sort of an internship. And so we
Mm-hmm.
were in a school. My role was just like a foster care intern.
Yep.
And so we were meeting with all these school professionals. And I just remember thinking, this is such a waste of time
Mm-hmm.
because it had none of those elements that you're talking about. Like we were just like talking around like issues, and then we left the meeting with like nothing really done. Like people, I think, just were frustrated. They weren't really understanding each other. And I'm just like, wow, I wish this meeting could have gone in the way that you're describing. Cause also, like, we just wasted over an hour sitting at this school when, like, in foster care too, like, you're insanely busy. All these
Yes.
people are also insanely busy. What
Right.
was the point? Like, now we're doing, like, nothing has changed for this student. And we
Right.
just like talked around a lot of stuff. So I feel like exactly what you're saying is so, so essential for people, like as professionals, but especially for actual like goals and meeting the student where they are and what they need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I love this role. This is so huge because I like really haven't heard of this. I've only really heard of that school social work, like micro level role.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges and the biggest rewards that you've seen in this work?
Okay. So I'm gonna talk about the challenges and rewards from the school social worker standpoint, if that's okay. And
Yeah,
then I can talk
absolutely.
about it from the cultural, but I think it'd be probably more relevant for the listeners because they're probably school social workers.
Definitely.
So I would say challenges are the caseload.
Hmm.
High caseloads and not enough social workers.
Yeah.
So feeling overwhelmed sometimes because you're dealing with a lot of crisis management, and sometimes that pushes your students who are not in crisis but need those counseling sessions. Sometimes it can kind of push them to the side because the crisis kind of trumps the student who's at baseline.
Yeah.
So that can be a huge challenge, having a schedule, and sometimes it kind of goes out the window
Hmm.
because so many things can happen throughout the day. So I
Right.
know that's a huge challenge. Also having boundaries,
Mm.
being able to set boundaries has been one of the biggest challenges I've heard from school social workers,
Yeah.
whether it's around taking a lunch break,
Mm.
or just saying no to an ask, but really knowing how to say no in a way that that person understands that, oh, this isn't part of their role.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that I know can be a challenge.
Mm.
Um, and then rewards, I would say, especially if you stay in a school for, 2 to 3 years, really seeing the growth of students through
Mm.
time. I think that is the biggest reward, especially when I was working in high school and I saw students grow from freshmen to seniors and then them
Yeah.
graduating. It's like a proud mama moment.
Ah.
Really seeing those students flourish and then getting the feedback from them like, oh my gosh, miss, like I wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for your support. Are you advocating for me in this way or
Yeah.
showing me how to ask for an extension on this paper? Just
Mhm.
little small things. It's like, wow, okay, so all of those tears, all that blood, sweat, and
Mhm.
tears was worth it.
Mhm.
And the student is actually appreciative or parents are appreciative. That
Mhm.
is so rewarding. Seeing the growth and hearing like, thank you for helping me.
Mhm. That's huge.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Especially with students like there are just also so many people in need. Like as you're growing and developing, I'm thinking like the teenage years, the preteen, like it's a lot. So
It,
to have that person that's also just like your cheerleader that's there for you at like
mhm.
every single school day that you're there is so huge.
Yeah. And I would say similarly, a reward as a coach is when you see a brand new school social worker that you've been working with for, a year or two, and they get
Yeah.
to the end of year two or they start year three and they're so confident in their skill set
Hmm.
and their clinical writing is on point, talking about like risk
Hmm.
assessments and they're running amazing groups and they're just doing all these great things in their school community. That's a proud moment too, because it's like, wow, I helped build them up.
Hmm.
I helped them feel more confident in their
Yeah.
role. So that is rewarding. And as far as challenges, from the coach's perspective, I would say not having the power to have
Mm,
more school social workers or hire more school social workers.
that's
Like
hard.
the
Yeah.
coaches don't have that power.
Hmm.
So that would be, I think, one of the biggest challenges, but I love being a coach. Like I love it so much. I enjoy
Hey, I
it.
love that. With getting more school social workers, how do we do that?
hmm
Like, is that like advocacy, showing up to like school? What is it, like board meetings? Like, what can that look like?
Those things, but data is, I think, one of the biggest factors.
That's huge.
So
Mhm.
speaking to my district, our director requests that, well, she doesn't request, this is a requirement, I should say,
Yeah.
is to produce monthly statistics. And
Hmm.
those statistics are really quantifiable data. So for example, it might be how many home visits did you do this month? How many individual sessions with special education students did you do this month? How
Hmm.
many individual sessions with regular education students? How many groups did you do with 504 students? How many crises did you have to attend to? How many IEP meetings did you go to? So it's really this quantifiable data
Hmm.
that can really prove that school social workers are needed. So we provide this to our director, who then sits at those tables with leadership, our superintendent, chief of schools, all these different, kind of head honchos, if you will. And she can share this data and say, hey, these are the numbers. We
Hmm.
really need more school social workers because this school alone has had 40 risk assessments in the past month and there's only one social worker. They
Hmm.
need more mental health support. So utilizing that data to prove that more school social workers is needed is one way. Advocacy at board meetings, going to those board meetings as school social workers, talking about what you're seeing in the schools as far
Hmm.
as mental health and why we're needed, and even having some parents and students speak out at those meetings
Absolutely.
about the benefits of having a school social worker is also very helpful.
Hmm. That's huge. Oh, that's so important because that's really such a big thing that I see is very rarely do I see schools that have enough school social workers. Like it's
Rarely, I know.
even the school that like I grew up in, it was a small town, but there was one school social worker for the entire district. So like from kindergarten through 12th grade,
Oh my
one
gosh.
school social worker. That's it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is
Well,
crazy.
I don't even remember having school social workers. Not
Right.
saying we didn't. I remember having, at the time, there were guidance counselors. I know the name is
Yeah.
now school counselors, but I remember having guidance counselors, but that was it. So maybe there were school social workers and I just
Mm,
didn't know who they were or had to work with them.
yeah.
But I don't really think there was.
Right. This does actually bring up another question for me. How do you make sure students know that you're there?
Yes.
Because I
Okay.
do think that was even something where, as a teenager, I probably would have gone to the school social worker if they were more available and if I
Right.
actually knew how, what they were
Right.
for.
Yes. So being visible, right?
Hmm.
Being visible in your school community. Maybe it is at arrival and dismissal. You're saying hi to kids. You're opening the door. You're saying good morning.
Yeah.
You're in the hallways. You're in the lunchroom. You're at recess. They're
Mhm.
seeing who you are. But in addition to that, going into the classrooms and teaching students about your role through various activities. Going to the staff meetings and saying, hey, I'm a school social worker. These are my roles. This is how you make a referral. These are some of the things I can do to support you and your students.
Mhm.
And then sending home correspondences to parents as well with information about your role. I would say in addition to that, it's really important for school social workers to do a lot of tier one work Tier 1 is basically interventions for the entire school.
Oh, that's huge.
So that can look like, I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
In the high school level, we use a curriculum called Signs of Suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So each health class, we would go in and we would teach this curriculum that teaches students the signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety, how to reach out to a trusted adult, what to do if you see somebody post something questionable about ending their life. Who can you reach out to? What can you say to them? How can you be supportive? And really knowing the signs and symptoms. So that's kind of like the tier 1 level. And if you're doing that with your whole school community, they're going to know who you are. Because you're going into the class, you're having assemblies, you're teaching them things, and they know how to get in contact with you if they need some more specific help.
Yeah, that's huge too. Because I think maybe health classes now are better, but it's also just helpful to get that mental health perspective from the person that you would also want to go to.
Right,
if you are struggling and want more information.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, okay. Fabulous. Now, actually, no, before we get into that, what are the biggest or the like most important, if you will, intervention strategies that you can use to excel in your role?
Okay. So I have lots in my toolbox, but I'll share a few. So the first I would say is using evidence-based practices.
Yes.
One that I think works extremely well in the school setting is DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, which focuses on 4 components. Mindfulness, we have emotional regulation, interpersonal effectiveness skills, and distress tolerance. So it teaches those 4 components, and really all students can probably benefit from DBT.
Yeah.
But we don't use it with all of them, but it's a really good intervention, research-based intervention to use. And there's curriculum with it. There's one specific activity that I like to use across the board. And I think you can use this in middle and high and probably upper elementary. The smaller kids, maybe not so much, but it's called the DBT house. So it is an outline of a house. It has a roof. It has a chimney. I think there might be 3 floors. It has the front door. So each area of the house is connected to kind of something within that child's life. So for example, let's talk about like the foundation of the house, right? So on the floor of the house, you would ask the student to write the values that guide your life. What are the things that are important to you, or the morals and values your family has instilled in you?
Yeah.
Then we would go to the walls. So it's like along the walls, you want to write about anything or anyone who supports you. So then we have the student do that. On the roof, name the things or the people that protect you. In one of the windows, what are some of the things you don't tell anyone? What are your secrets? So each area of the house connects to something related to the student, and it's a really good way to get to know them and kind of understand them kind of holistically.
Yeah.
So I find that to be a really good intervention, especially in the beginning when you're getting to know a student.
Yeah.
And that's something anybody could Google DBT house, and there'll be tons of links on how to use that in the outline of the home. The 3 wishes I have used in all grade levels. If you had 3 wishes that anything in the world could come true, it doesn't matter about money. It doesn't matter if mom and dad would say yes to it. What would it be? And a lot of times you can kind of hear through those 3 wishes what's really going on within themselves or their family dynamic. So a kid might say, oh, I wish my entire family lived together, my mom, my dad, and all my siblings. And then that can lead to other questions. So you can kind of dig more information out and find out more, of that child's experience. But the 3 wishes is a big one. The DBT house. And then I would say for adolescents and high school, 2 curriculums I really liked. Well, one is a curriculum, Safe Dates. And it really teaches about healthy relationships. It has a lot of scenarios and role plays that the students can engage in. They're really fun, but they're really great for learning because there's a lot of critical thinking that goes on. And then the One Love Foundation is a free website that has all of these different snippets and videos in regards to dating violence and unhealthy relationships. how to identify the red flags and the things that you can do to get out of those relationships. And that's an excellent, excellent resource. And you don't even have to pay for it. It's free.
Yeah, that's huge. I really love that too, because I mean, like I work as a therapist now that works with adults, and so many of the people I work with were working on relationship issues. Like it started when they were so young. And like when you're a teenager and maybe you don't even understand what's happened with your parents or what's influenced how you view relationships, this can be so essential to just like helping them get through that like period of life while they're and not get into any relationships that are really unhealthy or harmful for them.
Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome skills. I love it. Now, what makes, for you, from your perspective, what makes school social work different than other social work positions?
What makes it different? I would say as the school social worker, you are that piece that is trying to connect home, school, students, so that they can really attend to their academics and be academically successful.
Yeah.
And that would be different from, let's say, a DCF social worker who has more of that child protection lens, that is kind of their area. A medical social worker is kind of under that medical model.
Yeah.
Therapists, they're more outpatient, so they're not in the school, but we often collaborate with therapists. So it's unique in that sense that you're in that building with that student who is there a lot of their time.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of time with that student and you're doing a lot of connecting of all the pieces so that they can then get really good grades. So I say that would be the difference.
Okay. And you talking about therapists, I'm wondering right now, how do I phrase this? What am I trying to ask? I guess in what situation would a student like go to counseling from a school social worker versus having like an outside therapist? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So many times the school social worker may refer to outpatient services.
Okay.
Because one, many school social workers, we only are working from 10 months out of the year, September to June or, depending on where you are in the country. So there's always those summer months where they may not have support. So it's always good for a student who has that, level of need to have an outpatient therapist who they're seeing outside of school and throughout the summer. And with the school social work role, as I stated before, sometimes there's a lot of crises that happen.
Right. Okay.
So sometimes sessions are missed, to be 100% honest. We can make it up, but sometimes that consistency isn't always there in the way we want it to be. So it's good to have that consistent therapist. And then the school social worker and the therapist are in collaboration. So they're on the same page of the, skills or the, model of interventions that they're using that we're, kind of mirroring those same things. So I think it's generally important for an outpatient therapist to be involved if a student needs that level of care.
Absolutely. Good to know. Okay. Now, let's see. I know, so you have School Social Work Solutions.
Yes.
What first, before we get into all of that, like what first led you to start School Social Work Solutions?
So I'm going to blame it on the pandemic, having a lot of time to be home and kind of thinking of a lot of different things. So I've always been a planner girl. I've always used planners.
Love it.
And I had recently, prior to creating my planner, used the therapist planner, which is created by another social worker, Marlene Francois Madden, who's amazing. So she has a therapist planner. So I'd used that for several years. I loved it. But as I was using it, I was like, wow, I wish there was an area where I could put my caseload. I wish there was an area where I could put my monthly statistics. I wish there were some resources that could kind of help me as a school social worker be better at my role or explain my role better. I was just thinking of all these different components that would be useful for a school social worker. So like I said, it was during the pandemic. It was just like literally one night during the pandemic. So I opened my Google Docs and I just started kind of typing out like what I would want in this dream planner.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I Googled school social work planners. I didn't find very much. I found like some counselor planners that were on like Teachers Pay Teachers, but nothing like concrete, like hardbound. And that really, really spoke to the role of a school social worker.
Mm.
So I kind of like put that to the side and moved on with my life. And I happened to be scrolling Instagram, and the woman who created the therapist planner had a post and said, do you want to create your own planner or journal? I'm going to have a master class where I teach you how to create it from like start to finish. And I was like, what?
Well, look at that.
Right. It was like divine intervention.
Oh
So,
my God.
so I signed up for the master class. And to be completely honest, I kind of sat on it for a little bit because I was like, I don't know about that price tag, but I'm like, I don't know. I feel like this is what I need to kind of get this idea off the ground.
Yeah.
So I invested in myself. I took the course. It was absolutely amazing. She taught you how to do this from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
I followed all the steps to the T, and I was able to produce the planner.
Amazing. Wow. I love that. Because I mean, social work in general, I think is maybe getting more, I don't know, attention. Like people know what it is, but there's still like very limited resources that are actually there, especially when, I mean, I'm a planner girl as well. And it's really great to have a resource specific to you that would like get everything that you need and really support that role.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I followed the steps, and then kind of simultaneously, I started my Instagram page, not really knowing if I was really going to launch this thing or how that would all play out. But I was like, I want to build a community of school social workers. So I started it. I was going live about various topics that I was dealing with in the schools. I was collaborating with other school social workers, and I built this community. So when I actually did launch the planners, everybody was excited because we already had this community where we were talking about school social work. So it really helped when I launched initially, and I've had some really faithful customers, and through the years, really just trying to spread awareness through the brand. And it's been going well.
Yay. Okay. Now, do you have like a website where people can go buy it?
Yes. So the website is www.schoolswsolutions.com. On the website, you can purchase the physical planner. We have a digital version, and we also have a social work resource bundle that any social worker can use. And there's just various templates to help you stay organized.
Oh, amazing. Wow. Oh, what a beacon of light for social workers.
Thank you.
As we kind of wrap it up, this is a hard question, but what is just one piece of advice you would give to the social workers listening?
Ooh, one piece? Oh man, one.
No.
I would say truly know why you're going into this work. Because as Kim from the Dope Black Social Worker, I don't know if you follow her, she talks about having the power to help or harm individuals in this work. And if you're truly passionate about helping individuals, you have to do a lot of your own self-reflection, right?
Yes.
You have to be aware of different privileges you may have, different biases that you may have, and really address that before you go into work with individuals who are highly vulnerable, marginalized, and generally not treated very well. You want to be kind of like that beacon of light and that advocate for those individuals, but you got to do your own self work first if you're going to be effective with them. Yeah.
That is so huge, because I've seen social workers that haven't done that. And I mean, you're exactly right. It ends up creating a lot of harm, and it's kind of just like a power trip. Like, what are you doing here? To feel that saviorism, feel like you're helping people when you're really just making things worse.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's huge.
And I would say one more thing though.
Yeah,
one more thing. Now, of course, I have all these things in my mind.
I love this. This is great.
I would say networking is huge. Get in community with other social workers and other mental health professionals, because you can find so many other resources and people that can help kind of boost your skill set and your knowledge and connect you to other individuals through your career path. So networking is so key.
It really is too, because I think in this work, you got to have people that get it, you know, to like feel supported, to really know what it is and what it takes. And that's so essential. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for coming on. I feel like this was such a fabulous, really helpful episode. First to like highlight school social work, but your specific role in general. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly enjoyed this conversation. I love talking about social work, so I appreciate it.
Oh, good. Now I know you mentioned your Instagram and your website and everything. All that for those listening will be linked below. Is there anything else you want to plug or is that everything?
So I would say if you are a school social worker, if you're a district leader and you are looking to build the capacity of your school social workers, I am available for virtual and in-person professional learning.
Exciting.
I've done some topics on how to create social emotional learning SMART goals and progress monitor or collect data for them. And then how to put it all together in documentation form so you can present it at a meeting and show up as the mental health expert. As well as fostering a sense of belonging in your school community. And I can do various topics specific to the needs of that school district or those school social workers.
Yeah.
So I'm also available for that, and you can reach out via my website or shoot me an email at info@schoolswsolutions.com.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you so much. For those listening, everything will be linked below. Again, if you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to like, share, comment, do your thing, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much.